What if I told you that one of gaming's greatest masterpieces has no NPCs, no side quests, no collectibles, and little to no dialogue, making you feel completely alone in its world, and it asks you to eliminate peaceful creatures for your own selfish reasons, and somehow makes you complicit in your own downfall? This is Shadow of Colossus, a game that shouldn't work by today's standards, yet hits harder than most modern releases. And that's saying something for a 20-year-old game. This is the story of Wanda, a young man who steals a sacred sword and rides into a forbidden land carrying the lifeless body of a girl named Mono. His deal is simple: eliminate 16 ancient colossi and she'll be brought back to life. What could possibly go wrong? Everything, as it turns out. Here's what makes this game devastating. Some of these colossi don't even defend themselves. They're just existing peacefully in this ancient world until you show up with your sword and your desperate, selfish mission. And this game makes you do it anyway. This isn't just about slaying giants. Shadow of the Colossus is a masterclass in achieving more with less. Our minimalist design creates profound emotional impact that bloated modern games can't even touch. So let's talk about how an empty world and 16 boss fights created one of the most morally complex and lonely experiences in gaming history. Most modern games are terrified of empty space. Every corner needs a collectible, every path needs an NPC, every moment needs stimulation. Shadow of the Colossus looks at this philosophy and says, what if we did the exact opposite? This world is enormous and almost completely empty, and that emptiness is the point. When you first ride out into the Forbidden Land, there's nothing to distract you from the weight of what you are doing. No quest markers, no merchants, no exposition dumping NPCs. Just you, your horse, and the knowledge that somewhere out there, 16 giants are waiting to die by your hand. That emptiness creates something modern games have forgotten: anticipation. When you finally encounter something in this world, it matters. Every crumbling bridge tells a story about the civilization that built it. Every weathered statue hints at people who once worshipped here. Every collapsed temple speaks of a time lost and forgotten purposes. The environmental storytelling is masterful precisely because it's subtle. These ruins don't scream their history through audio logs or exposition dumps. They just exist, weathered and broken, letting you piece together what this place used to be: a thriving kingdom, reduced to scattered stones and overgrown pathways. But here's the genius of those long rides between colossi. They're not padding. Every gallop across empty plains builds your emotional investment in this world and your mission. The silence gives you space to think about what you are doing. The vastness makes you feel the weight of your isolation. Psychologically, the scales does something crucial. It makes you feel small, in a medium where we're usually the center of the universe. Shadow of the Colossus reminds you that you are just one small figure in an ancient, indifferent landscape. You're not a chosen hero blessed by destiny. You're a desperate young man who's stolen a sword and made a terrible bargain. The world doesn't care about your quest. It existed long before you arrived and will exist after you are gone. That feeling of smallness makes every Colossus encounter feel earned. When you finally see one of these titans rising from the landscape, when you realize the true scale of what you are attempting, the anticipation pays off in a way instant gratification never could. Modern games give you everything immediately. Shadow of the Colossus makes you cross an empty world to earn every revelation, every encounter, every moment of awe. You traverse this landscape alone, with only your thoughts, and growing guilt for company. And somehow that loneliness makes every moment infinitely more valuable. Here's where Shadow of the Colossus does something most games still can't figure out, even 20 years later. It makes you care about the things you have to kill. Each Colossus isn't just a boss fight with different attack patterns. They're individuals with personalities, moods, temperaments. Some are aggressive guardians that immediately recognize you as a threat. Others are gentle giants that seem confused by your presence, almost curious about this tiny intruder who's entering their domain. Then there are the ones that just damage you. Colossi that don't want to fight at all. They're just existing in their world, maybe sleeping, grazing, contemplating whatever ancient stone titans contemplate, until you show up with your sword and your mission. This game forces you to study each Colossus before you can defeat it. You observe how they move, where their weak points might be, how to use the environment against them. But in doing so, you start seeing them as more than obstacles. You see their behaviors, their reactions, how they interact with their surroundings. Some are playful, some are melancholic, some seem tired as if they've been waiting for this moment for centuries. The puzzle design is brilliant because it's integrated into who these creatures are. You don't climb the furry colossus because it has handholds. You climb it because it's its nature as a living being. The flying colossus isn't just a platforming challenge. It's a creature that lives in the air, and you must understand its patterns, its personality to bring it down. But here's what makes this emotionally devastating. That moment when you first encounter a peaceful colossus. Maybe it's grazing, maybe it's sleeping, maybe it's just standing there harmless and majestic. The game doesn't give you a choice. There's no dialogue option to find another way, no alternate path that spares their life. You have to kill them for your selfish reasons. The emotional weight is different for each one. Some colossi make you feel like a monster immediately. You're clearly the aggressor, the invader, the villain in their story. Others make you feel defensive at first, until you realize you sought them out. You came into their home. You started this fight. Visually, these creatures are masterpieces. The way they move, the weight and momentum of their massive forms, how stone and moss and ancient magic seem to flow together. When they fall, and they all must fall, there's a poetry to their death that modern games with all the advanced graphics still can't match. These aren't just animations, they feel like living things accepting their fate. Every Colossus death is a small tragedy, and the game knows it. The music swells mournfully as these ancient beings collapse. Wanda himself seems affected, stumbling as black energy flows right into him. Even the game's mechanics seem to mourn as you gain some nothing from these victories except the gradual corruption of your own soul. This is character design at its finest, creating beings you barely interact with, who can't speak, who are fundamentally alien to you, yet making you feel genuine emotion for each one. Most modern games can't make you care about their fully voiced, motion captured human characters. Shadow of the Colossus makes you mourn for giants made of a stone and shadow. Shadow of the Colossus commits to a radical belief that less can be more. There are no NPCs, shopkeepers, or quest givers, no side quests to distract you, or collectibles to pad out the playtime, no skill trees, crafting systems, or inventory management. Just you and your horse. This isn't laziness or budget constraints. This is by design. Every element that was cut for a reason, to keep you focused on the emotional core of what you are doing. There's nothing to distract you from the weight of your choices, nothing to make you feel heroic or justified, just the growing realization that you might be the villain of the story. The storytelling through silence is masterful. The game doesn't explain who Doman really is. It doesn't tell you why this land is forbidden, or what happened to the civilization that built these temples. It doesn't spell out the moral implications of what you are doing. Most games would have audio logs explaining everything, cutscenes breaking down the mythology, NPCs offering exposition about the ancient evil you're unleashing. Instead, Shadow of the Colossus trusts you to piece it together. The ominous voice promising impossible things, the way Wanda grows paler and more corrupted after each kill. The ancient seals that break as each Colossus falls. The game shows you the consequences and trusts you to understand what they mean. This extends to gameplay itself. There's no tutorial explaining how to climb the Colossi, no button prompts telling you when to jump or where to grab. You have to figure it out. Study these creatures, understand their behavior, finding their weaknesses through observation and experimentation. The game respects your intelligence enough to let you fail, learn, and solve problems without constant guidance. But perhaps most importantly, all this emptiness creates emotional space without constant dialogue, exposition, or objectives cluttering your headspace. You're left alone with your thoughts and your guilt. The long rides between colossi aren't just travel time, they're processing time. Time to think about what you just did. Time to look at Wanda's increasingly corrupted appearance. Time to question whether bringing back one person is worth all this death. And most games are terrified of these quiet moments. They fill every second with audio cues, objective markers, companion chatter, anything to keep you stimulated and engaged. Shadow of the Colossus understands that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is shut up and let the player feel. That emotional space lets you project your own feelings onto the experience, your own guilt, doubts, and rationalizations. The game doesn't tell you how to feel about killing each Colossus. It just brings you to their death and lets you sit with whatever emotion that brings up. By the time you realize what you've done, what you have unleashed, what your love has cost this world, there's nowhere to hide from that realization. This is minimalism and emotional amplification. By stripping away everything except the essential elements, you, your mission, and the giants that must die, the game forces you to confront the true weight of what love can drive us to do. Shadow of the Colossus represents everything we've lost in the modern game design. This was made in an era when games were patient, when developers trusted that players could handle the silence, emptiness, and moral complexity without constant reassurance. Compare this to today's open world bloat, where every map is cluttered with icons screaming for your attention, where you can't ride for 30 seconds without a notification popping up, a collectible glinting in the distance, or an NPC radioing in with another mission. They pump you full of dopamine hits, quest completed, achievement unlocked, rare item found, keeping you in constant artificial stimulation. This game gives you long stretches of nothing but wind, wolf beats, and the weight of what you're about to do. And somehow, the nothingness is more engaging than all of Ubisoft's towers combined. This game exists because someone had an artistic vision and was allowed to pursue it. Not focused, grouped to death, not committee designed to hit every demographic, not watered down to appeal to the broadest possible market. Team Ico looked at conventional game design and said, yeah, let's do something different. What if we made a game with no traditional enemies except bosses? What if we made emptiness the core mechanic? What if we made the player complicit in evil through love? Try pitching that in today's market. So it's mostly empty, the protagonist is arguably the villain, there's no progression system, and it makes people feel bad about playing it. We'd be laughed out of the room. But that artistic purity, that commitment to a singular vision, is what created something timeless. This was also the pre-achievement era, when games had to motivate you intrinsically. There was no external reward system telling you you're doing great, no trophies for killing your 10th Colossus, no leaderboards comparing your completion time. The only reward you're finishing Shadow of the Colossus was the experience itself, and the horrifying realization of what you have done and how ugly it gets. Your motivation came from within the narrative, from your connection to Wanda's desperate quest. And when that motivation curled into guilt and horror, the game didn't try to make you feel better about it. It let you sit with those emotions because they were the point. The PS2 era forced developers to be creative with limitations. They couldn't just throw more polygons at a problem or rely on photorealistic graphics. Team Ico had to find ways to make you feel small and odd using limited hardware available. So they focus on scale, atmosphere, the weight and movement of these creatures. They use artistic vision and clever design to create moments that still take your breath away 20 years later. Those limitations bred innovation. Modern games have unlimited processing power, but they use it to create bigger maps filled with more busy work. Shadow of the Colossus used PS2 hardware to create genuine awe, genuine emotion, genuine artistry. This represents a time when games were allowed to be difficult, not just in gameplay, but also emotionally difficult, morally difficult. When they trusted players to handle complex themes without spelling out every word. When they could be patient, thoughtful, and yes, even a little bit pretentious, because they were trying to be art, not just entertainment products. We traded all that for engagement metrics and retention rates, for games that never let you feel comfortable or bored or morally compromised, for experiences designed by an algorithm rather than artistic vision. Shadow of the Colossus stands as a monument to what games can be when they are allowed to be patient, challenging, and uncompromising in their artistic vision. And playing it today feels like visiting a museum of lost possibilities. By the end, you realize that Wanda isn't a hero on a noble quest. He was a desperate young man who doomed the world for love. Those 16 colossi weren't monsters terrorizing the land. They were guardians, prison wardens. Each one contained a fragment of an ancient evil called Dorman, and you systematically murdered them all to free it. Every colossus you killed weakened the seal. Every victory made you more corrupted, more pale, more inhuman, even growing horns. The game showed you this happening in real time, but you pressed on anyway because you loved Mono, because you'd come too far to stop, because the game made you feel complicit in your own moral downfall. And that final sequence, when Dorman takes over and you become this monstrous giant, laying waste to the very people trying to stop the apocalypse that you have unleashed. The game gives you control one last time as you're being sucked into that vortex, lets you struggle desperately to escape, gives you hope that maybe Wanda can survive this. Then it takes that hope away and drags you into the void. This is what obsessive love costs. Not just your own soul, but potentially the entire world. Wanda got this wish. Mono lives, but she's now trapped in a forbidden land with only animals for company, caring for a horned baby that may or may not be a lover reborn, completely unaware of the price paid for a resurrection. Going through this as an adult hit me hard as I was recognizing myself in Wanda's selfishness. We've all had moments where we'd sacrifice anything for the people we love. The game asks you the uncomfortable question: what if sacrifice isn't yours to make? What if your personal grief doesn't justify cost to everyone else? This is why games like Shadow of the Colossus matter in today's landscape. While modern games pat you on the head and tell you you're the hero, this game forces you to confront uncomfortable truths about love, obsession, and the price of our desires. It doesn't offer easy answers or moral comfort. It just shows you the consequences of your choices and lets you live with them. We need more games willing to make this morally uncomfortable, to question our motivations, to suggest that maybe we're not the good guy in every story. One game I can think about is The Last of Us, where Joel saves Ellie, but at what cost? So, in an era where games are designed to make us feel powerful and righteous, Shadow of the Colossus reminds us that sometimes the most human thing you can do is the most monstrous thing imaginable. That's what real art does. Complicates your feelings, challenges your assumptions, and leaves you with more questions than answers. Shadow of the Colossus does all of that and somehow makes you grateful for the experience. This is Chaos Bunker. Like and subscribe, and thanks for watching.